This 4-year-old beggar girl says they locked me in the bathroom with the roaches, but a millionaire heard everything through the intercom, and something happens. Comment on what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The old intercom crackled 3 times before the small, trembling voice cut through the silence of the early morning. Theodore Ted Castanheira, 58, startled awake in the leather armchair where he'd once again fallen asleep, surrounded by piles of overdue bills and collection notices stacked on the mahogany desk in his study. They locked me in the bathroom with the roaches when I cried. The child's voice murmured through the obsolete device that connected the mansion gate to the house. I counted to 100, but the roaches still crawled on my leg. Ted rubbed his tired eyes, initially thinking it was some kind of prank call. For the past 3 years, since he'd lost nearly everything in bad stock market investments, he rarely received visitors at his property on the outskirts of Pleasantville. The 2-story mansion, with its once immaculate gardens now overgrown with weeds, maintained only the facade of prosperity that he desperately tried to preserve. Today I collected 17 cans, the voice continued, now clearer. The lady at the bakery gave me a stale roll, but it wasn't bad, just a little hard. Ted rose from the armchair, his footsteps echoing through the cold marble of the entryway. Through the living room window, he could make out a small silhouette sitting on the low wall that separated his property from the vacant lot next door. It was a child, apparently talking to herself in the darkness. "My name is Iris," the girl said, as if answering a question no one had asked. "Iris Marie Santos, 6 years old. I know how to say my full name because Aunt Joan taught me before she went away." The child's voice carried a deep sadness that made something stir in Ted's chest. He'd grown accustomed to the loneliness of recent years, but those words broke the silence that had become his only companion. He approached the intercom and, on an impulse he couldn't explain, pressed the button to speak. "Hello," he said, hesitantly. "I can hear you." The silence that followed was so long that Ted thought the girl had run away. Then her voice returned, now filled with surprise and fear. "Who's there? Are you one of the bad men?" "No, I'm not," Ted replied quickly. "I live in this house. Are you okay? Where are your parents?" "I don't have parents," Iris said simply. "I ran away from the bad place 4 days ago. Now I live here in the lot. It's safer than there." Ted felt a pang in his stomach. A 6-year-old child, alone on the streets, sleeping in a vacant lot. He looked around the mansion, with its expensive furniture covered in sheets and its overdue utility bills. Even with all his financial problems, he still had a roof over his head and food in the refrigerator. "What bad place?" he asked, genuinely concerned. "Aunt Noosa's foster home," Iris replied, her voice even lower. "She said she took care of kids, but she didn't. She and the men who came there did bad things." Ted closed his eyes, processing the girl's words. A foster home where bad things happened. He'd read about such cases in the newspapers, but he never imagined he'd find a victim talking to him through his intercom in the middle of the night. "How many children were there in that place?" he asked. "Lots, I always counted. There were 17 when I ran away. There's Bruna, who's 5, Kaio, who's 7, Letitia." Iris began reciting names with impressive precision, as if she had memorized every detail of life in the home. Ted was impressed by the girl's memory. She spoke clearly about specific details, describing not only the children, but also adults who frequented the place, meal times, daily routines. "You have a very good memory," he commented. "My mom said I was special like that," Iris replied, with a sigh. "Before she went to heaven, she always said, 'Iris, you remember everything, honey. That'll help you someday.'" For 2 hours, Ted stayed talking to the girl through the intercom. She told him about her escape from the home, about how she survived by collecting recyclables during the day and hiding during the night. She spoke about the abuse she suffered along with the other children, always with a precision of detail that was both impressive and heartbreaking. As the sun began to rise, Iris said goodbye, saying she needed to go out to look for more cans before other people took the best spots. Ted stood at the window watching the small silhouette walking away along the cobblestone street, carrying an old plastic bag on her shoulders. Throughout that day, he couldn't concentrate on anything else. The piles of bills remained on the desk. The collection notices kept arriving, but all he could think about was the voice of that girl and the terrible things she had described. Iris had spoken about adults who visited the home during the night, about conversations she heard hidden, about documents she saw being signed. In the afternoon, Ted did something he hadn't done in months. He left the house to go shopping. He bought fresh bread, milk, fruit, cookies. They weren't expensive products, but within his current financial situation, they represented a small sacrifice. When he returned home, he put everything in a bag and left it near the wall, in the place where he had seen Iris the night before. The food was gone when he woke up the next day. That second night, Iris's voice echoed through the intercom again, promptly at midnight. This time, she thanked him for the food and began to tell more details about the home she had fled. She spoke about a woman named Cleusa who always came in a black car to pick up some children, and they never came back. Aunt Nusa said they were adopted by good families, Iris said, but I heard Aunt Cleusa talking on the phone once. She laughed a lot and said the papers were perfect, that no one would ever find out. Ted felt a chill down his spine. Perfect papers that no one would find out. This didn't sound like a legitimate adoption. Do you remember anything else about this Cleusa? He asked. She always came with a skinny man who was always messing with the computer, Iris replied. They talked about very big numbers. She said each child was worth 50,000, sometimes more. Ted's blood ran cold. $50,000 per child. This wasn't adoption, it was child trafficking. And Iris had witnessed everything, recorded every conversation in her extraordinary memory. It was at that moment that Ted realized he was about to get involved in something much bigger and more dangerous than a simple story of an abandoned child. And that perhaps, for the first time in 3 years, he had found a purpose greater than his own financial difficulties. For an entire week, Ted maintained the routine of leaving food for Iris and talking to her through the intercom every midnight. The girl had become his only real companion, and he found himself anxiously awaiting those moments of conversation. Iris had a unique way of seeing the world, mixing childhood innocence with a maturity forced by circumstances. "Today I saw a little bird with a broken wing," she said one of those nights. "I tried to help it, but it ran away from me. I think it's afraid of people like I used to be." "And now you're not afraid anymore?" Ted asked. "Not of you. You're different. You don't yell, you don't hit, you don't make me do bad things." Iris's words always carried small revelations about the horrors she had experienced, and Ted felt a rage growing inside him against those who had hurt such a special child. Little by little, she began to trust more and tell specific details about the scheme she had witnessed in the home. "The skinny man's name was Vanderlei," she said one Thursday. "He always talked about accounts in different banks. He said he was going to get rich soon, that he just needed to finish cleaning up a few more documents." Ted mentally noted each piece of information. Cleusa, Vanderlei, falsified documents, child trafficking. A clearer picture of an organized, criminal operation was forming, and Iris, unknowingly, was the only witness to everything. On Friday morning, Ted was surprised by the sound of the doorbell. No one had visited his house in months, and he had developed the habit of pretending not to be home when someone showed up, usually bill collectors or lawyers representing creditors. But this time, something made him look out the window. A middle-aged woman, well-dressed with carefully styled brown hair, was standing in front of the gate. She was driving a shiny black car and carrying a briefcase. There was something in her posture that conveyed authority and confidence. Ted hesitated, but decided to answer. When he opened the electronic gate, the woman approached with a professional smile. "Mr. Theodore Castanheira?" she asked, extending her hand. "My name is Cleusa Barreto. I'm a social worker from the area. I need to talk to you about a very important matter." Ted's heart raced. Cleusa. The same woman Iris had spoken about so many times. The woman who supposedly organized illegal adoptions. He tried to maintain his composure, but he could feel his hands trembling slightly. "Of course, come in, please," he said, forcing a smile. "How can I help you?" Cleusa looked around the property with assessing eyes. Ted realized that she was impressed with the size of the mansion and the apparent wealth of the place. Fortunately, the external facade still maintained the illusion of prosperity. "What a magnificent property," she commented as they walked towards the house. "You certainly are a successful man." "I've been blessed," Ted replied vaguely, guiding her to the living room. He quickly picked up some bills that were on the sofa and hid them behind a cushion. Cleusa sat down gracefully and opened her briefcase. "Mr. Theodore, I came here because we received reports that a missing child may be hiding in the vicinity of this area. A 6-year-old girl, brown hair, very thin. Her name is Iris." Ted kept his expression neutral, but his heart was beating so hard he was sure Cleusa could hear it. "A missing child? That's terrible. Must have seen something on the news?" "No, this case hasn't been released to the media," Cleusa said quickly. "The girl ran away from an institution where she was being temporarily cared for. We are very concerned about her safety." "I understand. And why do you think she might be here?" Cleusa leaned forward, her tone becoming more confidential. "Mr. Theodore, people in your social position have a responsibility to the community. If this child is indeed here in the area, she may be going hungry, cold, in danger. I need to find her to take her back to a safe environment." Ted watched Cleusa's expression carefully. There was something in her eyes that didn't match the maternal concern she was trying to demonstrate. There was coldness there, calculation. "Of course, I will help in any way I can," he said, "but I haven't seen any children in the area. What did you say she looks like?" "Iris is a very special girl," Cleusa said, and Ted noticed a subtle change in her tone. "She has an exceptional memory. She remembers everything she sees and hears. Sometimes that can be problematic." "Problematic how?" Cleusa hesitated for a moment. "Well, children with this type of ability sometimes make up stories, mix reality with fantasy. If she manages to convince someone that her memories are true, it can cause unnecessary problems for innocent people." Ted began to understand the game. Cleusa was trying to discredit Iris before anyone even heard her stories. This confirmed his suspicions that the girl really knew things that could harm this woman. "I understand," he said carefully, "and if I saw this girl, what would be the correct procedure?" "Call me immediately," Cleusa said, handing him a card. "But Mr. Theodore, I must warn you about something important. This child may try to approach well-intentioned people like yourself, telling dramatic stories to get help. She's very convincing, but we mustn't be fooled. Dramatic stories? About abuse, about things she supposedly saw and heard. As I said, she has difficulty separating reality from fantasy." Cleusa stood up, smoothing her skirt. "People in your social position are preferred targets of these troubled children. They know that generous people can be easily manipulated." Ted accompanied Cleusa to the door, his brain working quickly. She wasn't just looking for Iris. She was doing preventative damage control, trying to discredit the girl in case someone had already heard her stories. "One last question," Clusa said, stopping at the door. Do you live alone on this property? Yes, I have lived alone for a few years. And what field do you work in, if you don't mind me asking? Ted hesitated. Investments, financial market. Clusa's eyes lit up with interest. How interesting. You must understand financial transactions, transfers, that sort of thing. I have some experience, he replied cautiously. Great. You know, Mr. Theodore, I think we could talk more about this on another occasion. I'm always looking for experienced people to advise me on financial matters related to the social work I do. After Clusa left, Ted stood on the porch for long minutes, watching the black car disappear around the bend in the road. The conversation had confirmed his worst fears. Iris was really running away from something terrible, and Clusa was clearly a part of the problem. But there was something more disturbing. The way Clusa had talked about investments and financial transactions, the sudden interest when she learned of his experience in the area. Was she thinking of involving him in the scheme? Ted looked at the vacant lot, where he knew Iris would be hiding during the day. The girl had no idea of the danger that was approaching. Clusa clearly suspected that someone in the area might have had contact with her, and she wouldn't give up easily. On that afternoon, for the first time in weeks, Ted left the house again. He bought a simple prepaid cell phone and some extra groceries. He didn't know exactly how, but he needed to find a way to protect Iris without putting them both in even greater danger. When night fell, he waited anxiously for midnight, hoping to hear the familiar voice through the intercom. But this time, when Iris spoke, there was urgency in her words. Ted, she was here today, Aunt Clusa. I saw her talking to you by the fence. Did you tell her about me? Iris's question echoed through the intercom like an accusation filled with fear and distrust. Ted felt the weight of responsibility fall on his shoulders. One wrong word could make the girl run away forever, and he knew she wouldn't survive long alone on the streets. No, Iris. I didn't tell her anything, he replied, quickly. In fact, she came here precisely because she suspects someone might have seen you. She's looking for you. The silence that followed was tense. Ted could imagine the girl on the other side, analyzing his words, deciding if she could trust him. What did she say to you? Iris asked finally, her voice even lower than usual. She said you made up stories, that I shouldn't believe anything you told me, that you mixed reality with fantasy. I don't make anything up, Iris said with surprising firmness for a 6-year-old. I remember everything I see and hear. My mom always said my memory was a special gift. I believe you, Iris. Everything you've told me makes sense now that I've met this woman in person. Ted heard a relieved sigh coming from the intercom. Ted, I'm scared. If she finds me, she'll take me back to that place. And this time they won't let me run away. That's not going to happen, I promise. The words left his mouth before he could think about the implications. How could he make such a promise? He himself was broke, without resources, without influence. How can you promise that? Iris asked, as if she were reading his thoughts. Ted hesitated. How to explain to a 6-year-old that he had lost almost everything, that he could barely pay his own bills? But maybe honesty was the best way. Iris, I need to tell you something about me. I'm not as rich as this house makes it seem. I lost almost all my money a few years ago, but that doesn't mean I won't do everything in my power to protect you. You're lying to me too. Iris's voice was small, hurt. No, I'm not lying. I'm being honest with you because you deserve to know the truth. I really want to help you, but I need you to understand that I also have limitations. For a long moment, only the static of the intercom filled the silence. Then Iris spoke again, her voice filled with an understanding beyond her years. My mom always said that good people sometimes go through hard times, but that doesn't make them stop being good. You're a good person, Ted, I know that. The girl's words touched something deep in Ted's heart. For years, he had felt like a failure, a man who had lost everything through wrong decisions. But in Iris's eyes, he was still someone trustworthy. "Thank you for saying that," he murmured. "Now tell me, were you able to hear what Cleusa and I talked about?" "I heard everything. She wants you to work for her, doesn't she? She talked about money and financial advice." Ted was impressed again by the girl's ability to observe. "Yes, she showed interest in that." "Why do you think she would make that proposal?" "Because at the home, I heard her talking about needing someone who understood money to help with her business. She always said she needed someone respectable, someone people trusted." "And you think she suspected I had been in contact with you?" "I think so. She kept asking strange things, testing you, like she did with the other people before trusting them." Ted realized he was dealing with something much more complex than he had initially imagined. Iris was not just a witness. She understood Cleusa's behavior patterns. She could anticipate her strategies. "Iris, I need to ask you a difficult question. Do you remember specific details about how they falsified the documents? Names, processes, anything that could help prove what they did?" "I remember a lot. Vandelay always talked about clean IDs and how they changed names on the papers. He said he had contacts in county clerk's offices and that he could make any document look real." "Do you remember names of places, specific county clerk's offices?" "I remember. They always talked about the county clerk's office downtown, the Mendez County Clerk's office. And there was another place too, a company they used to launder the money called Blue Rock Construction." Ted mentally noted the names. Mendez County Clerk's office, Blue Rock Construction. If Iris was right, there was a well-structured network operating in the region. "There's one more thing," Iris continued. "They always talked about a boss, someone who was in charge of everything. A woman named Dalva. Aunt Cleusa was very afraid of her." "Dalva what?" "Dalva Mendez. She owned a lot of things. They said she had power over judges and district attorneys, that no one could mess with her." The puzzle was getting clearer and scarier at the same time. Dalva Mendez, possibly owner of the county clerk's office where they falsified documents. Cleusa as field operator, Vandelay as forger, and now they wanted to recruit Ted. "Iris, I need to think about how we're going to solve this. But first, I need to know if you'd be willing to trust me a little more." "What do you mean?" "Maybe it would be better for you to stay inside the house, where I can protect you better. In the vacant lot, you're too exposed." The silence stretched for so long that Ted thought he had lost the connection. Finally, Iris answered, "I'm afraid of being trapped inside the house. At the home, they always locked us up when they did bad things. What if you change your mind? What if you decide to turn me into them? I understand your fear. How about this? You stay in the backyard during the day, where no one can see you from the street, but you can leave whenever you want. And I'll leave the back door always open so you know you're not trapped." Iris considered the proposal. "What if Aunt Cleusa comes back? If she comes back, you hide in the basement. There's a secret entrance through the kitchen pantry. No one would find you there." "Would you show me that place first?" "Of course. Right now, if you want." Ted left the house for the first time in a week in the early morning hours. When he arrived at the gate, he found Iris waiting on the other side. In the moonlight, he could see her clearly for the first time. She was a small girl for 6 years old, too thin, with disheveled brown hair and dirty mended clothes. But her eyes were extraordinary, large, expressive, with an intelligence that was impressive. "Hi," she said shyly. "Hi, Iris. It's good to finally meet you in person." They walked together to the house, and Ted showed her the hidden basement, the backyard, the guest room she could use. Iris examined everything with meticulous attention, memorizing every detail. "It's a very big house," she commented. "It is. Sometimes too big for one person alone." "Do you feel alone?" The question caught Ted by surprise. Yes, sometimes I do. I always felt alone too, but now less so. That night, for the first time in months, Ted didn't sleep in the armchair in the study. Iris stayed in the guest room, but left the door open, and he remained awake in the hallway, where he could hear her if she needed anything. The next morning, they had breakfast together in the kitchen. Iris ate slowly, savoring each piece of bread with butter, as if it were a delicacy. That's when the phone rang. It was Clusa. "Mr. Theodore, how are you? I hope I'm not bothering you too early." "No, not at all. How can I help you? I was thinking about our conversation yesterday. I'd really like to discuss a job proposal with you. How about lunch together today?" Ted looked at Iris, who had stopped eating and was watching him intently. The girl shook her head slightly, a silent warning. "That would be a pleasure," he replied. "Where would you like to meet?" "How about the restaurant at the Pleasantville Hotel? Noon? And Mr. Theodore, bring documents that prove your financial experience. I have a very interesting proposal to make." After hanging up the phone, Ted turned to Iris, who was watching him with a worried expression. The girl had stopped eating completely, and her small hands were trembling slightly. "She wants to meet you because she suspects you helped me," Iris said with conviction. "At the home, she always did that. When she suspected someone, she would set up a meeting to talk about work." "And what happened at those meetings?" Ted asked, feeling a chill in his stomach. "She tested people. She asked questions to find out what they knew. And if she found out that the person knew too much—" Iris paused, her big eyes filling with fear. "What happened, Iris?" "They disappeared, like Mr. Marcos, who worked in the kitchen at the home. He started asking questions about why so many children were disappearing. One day, Aunt Clusa set up a meeting with him, said she had a better job to offer. He never came back." Ted felt his blood run cold. He was dealing with people willing to eliminate any threat to their business. But if he refused the meeting now, Clusa would become even more suspicious. "Iris, I need to go to this meeting. If I don't go, she'll know something's wrong." "No," said Iris, rising from the chair with tears in her eyes. "You're the only good person I have now. If you disappear like Mr. Marcos—" Ted knelt in front of the girl, holding her small hands. "I'm not going to disappear, but I need to be smart about this. Can you help me?" Iris nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I need to know exactly how Clusa acts in these meetings. What kind of questions she asks, how she tests people. She always starts talking about money and opportunities. Then she asks about the person's family, if they live alone, if anyone would miss them. And in the end, she asks a question about the children from the home, pretending it's just curiosity." "What kind of question about the children?" "She asks if the person has heard strange stories about children in the area, if anyone has tried to tell bad things about charities. That's how she finds out if anyone has talked to me." Ted processed this information. Clusa clearly had a method for identifying people who could pose threats, but maybe he could use that to his advantage. "Iris, if I go to this meeting and pretend I don't know anything about you, maybe I can find out more information about their organization. Information that could help stop them." "It's too dangerous," Iris murmured. "Yes, it is, but if we don't do anything, they'll keep hurting other children, and eventually they'll find you." Iris was silent for a long moment, clearly struggling with conflicting feelings. Finally, she looked at Ted with surprising determination. "If you go, I'll help, but you have to promise one thing. Anything. If I tell you to run, you run immediately. No questions, no trying to convince me. I know how to recognize when they're planning something very bad." Ted agreed, although he wasn't sure if he could keep such a promise. The idea of abandoning Iris if something went wrong was unbearable. They spent the morning preparing for the meeting. Iris helped Ted select documents that would make it seem like he still had significant financial resources without revealing his true situation. The girl demonstrated an impressive knowledge of how Cleusa analyzed potential partners. "She always looks first at people's watches and shoes," Iris explained. "Then she asks about cars and houses. You need to look rich, but not too rich, otherwise she'll get suspicious." "Why not too rich?" "Because very rich people ask a lot of questions and have lawyers. She prefers people who have some money, but need more." At 11:30, Ted prepared to leave. He put on his best suit, still in good condition despite the difficult years, and wore leather shoes that had been expensive when purchased. Iris helped him choose a discreet but elegant watch. "Remember," she said, checking his appearance one last time, "if she asks about strange children in the area, you say you haven't seen anything. But if she insists a lot, you make up a story about having seen a girl sometimes, but that she always runs away when you approach." "Why that specific story?" "Because that way she'll think you've seen me, but that I don't trust you enough to tell you secrets. That will make her want to use you to capture me." Iris's strategic intelligence continued to impress Ted. A 6-year-old child had developed a sophisticated understanding of Cleusa's methods of manipulation. The restaurant at the Pleasantville Hotel was elegant, frequented by the local elite. Ted arrived promptly at noon and found Cleusa already waiting at a reserved table, wearing a navy blue suit and displaying discreet but expensive jewelry. "Mr. Theodore, what a pleasure to see you again," she said, rising to greet him. "You look very elegant today." "Thank you. You look very well too." They sat down, and Cleusa immediately began to observe his accessories, exactly as Iris had predicted. Her eyes lingered on Ted's watch and his shoes before returning to his face. "I hope you brought some documents as we discussed," she said, after they ordered lunch. "I did," Ted replied, showing a folder with carefully selected bank statements that showed only the accounts with positive balances, omitting the enormous debts. Cleusa examined the papers with professional attention. "Impressive. I see you have experience with diversified investments, and you live alone in that magnificent property." "Yes, I've lived alone for a few years." "No family?" "No one who worries." "Too much about your schedule or activities?" The question sounded exactly as Iris had warned. Cleusa was mapping his social isolation. "No, I have no close family. My parents passed away a long time ago and I never married." "How convenient," Cleusa murmured, and Ted noticed a calculating glint in her eyes. "Mr. Theodore, I'll be direct. I coordinate a foundation that works with adoptions and childcare. We've been very successful, but we need to expand our operations." "What kind of expansion?" "We need someone with your experience to help us with the financial side, moving funds, investments, that sort of thing. The work is very well compensated." "Sounds interesting. What kind of figures are we talking about?" "To start, $50,000 a month, just a few hours of work per week." Ted almost choked on his drink. $50,000 a month was more than he'd seen in years. But he remembered Iris's words about each child being worth $50,000. "That's a generous amount," he said carefully. "What kind of work exactly?" "Basically, you would receive transfers from our international clients and redistribute the funds among our different operations. All perfectly legal, of course." International clients, redistribution of funds. It was money laundering, clearly. "And these operations are all related to adoptions?" "Among other things. We work with various forms of social assistance." Cleusa leaned forward. "Mr. Theodore, can I trust in your discretion? What I'm about to tell you is confidential." Ted nodded, feeling his heart race. "Some of the children we care for are special. Children who have experienced trauma, who sometimes invent fantastic stories about abuse. Our work includes protecting these children from themselves, you understand." "How so?" "Well, sometimes these traumatized children manage to convince well-intentioned adults that their fantasies are real. This can cause serious problems for the institutions that are genuinely trying to help them. Ted kept his expression neutral, but internally he was seething with anger. Cleusa was laying the groundwork to discredit anything Iris might have told him. "That must be very difficult to deal with," he commented. "It is. In fact, we have a specific situation right now. A girl ran away from our institution a few weeks ago. She has a special condition, eidetic memory, but accompanied by fantastical tendencies. If she manages to convince someone that her memories are real..." "What kind of memories?" "Dramatic stories about alleged criminal schemes, about adults who are supposedly selling children. Completely absurd things, but very convincing when told by a child who appears traumatized." Ted forced an expression of understanding. "And you think she might be in the area where I live?" "It's possible. Have you by any chance seen a strange child around the area? A small girl, very thin, brown hair?" It was the crucial moment. Ted remembered Iris's instructions. "Now that you mention it, I think I've seen a child a few times in the vacant lot next to my property, but whenever I tried to approach her to see if she needed help, she ran away." Cleusa's eyes lit up with intense interest. "Tell me more about that." Ted took a deep breath before continuing his carefully planned story. "Well, I've seen the girl maybe 3 or 4 times in the last week, always from a distance, collecting things in the vacant lot. Once I tried to approach to offer help, but she ran as if she were very scared." Cleusa leaned even further forward, her eyes shining with an intensity that made Ted feel uncomfortable. "Did she say anything? Did she try to communicate in any way?" "No, she always ran away before I could talk to her. She seemed terrified of any approach from adults." "Perfect," Cleusa murmured, almost to herself. Then, in a normal voice, "Mr. Theodore, this information is extremely valuable. This child urgently needs proper medical and psychological care. Of course, I understand perfectly. I'd like to propose something. How about we combine our 2 objectives? You help me recover this girl, and in return, I offer you a permanent position in our organization, with a starting salary of $100,000 a month. $100,000. Ted struggled to maintain his composure. It was more money than he had seen in years, enough to solve all his financial problems, but the price would be to betray Iris. "That's a very generous offer," he said slowly. "How exactly could I help you?" "Simple. You would go home and try to gain the girl's trust, leave food for her, talk to her through the intercom if she communicates. The goal would be to make her feel safe enough to approach. And then? Then you would call me, and I would pick her up with a specialized team. Nothing traumatic, just professionals trained to deal with troubled children." Ted knew that specialized team meant people willing to use force if necessary. "And if she doesn't, trust me, I'm sure she will. Children like Iris are naturally drawn to supportive father figures. She's probably already tried to communicate with you, hasn't she?" The question caught Ted off guard. Was it a trap? Did Cleusa know something specific? "Why do you ask that?" "Because I know her behavior well. Iris always looks for adults who seem safe to tell her fantastical stories to. It's part of her psychological condition." Ted decided to stick to his original version. "No, she's never tried to communicate with me. As I said, she always runs away when she sees me." Cleusa studied his face for a long moment. "Interesting. Normally she would have already tried some contact. Maybe she's more traumatized than we thought." The waiter brought the dishes, momentarily interrupting the conversation. Ted took the opportunity to organize his thoughts. Cleusa was clearly testing his story, looking for inconsistencies. "Mr. Theodore," Cleusa said after the waiter walked away, "can I count on your collaboration in this project? It's a delicate situation that requires absolute discretion." "Naturally. When would you like me to start? Today. Go home. Establish a routine of leaving food for her. Try to create an environment of trust. As soon as she approaches, call me immediately. And if she tries to tell me these stories you mentioned, listen to everything carefully, but don't believe anything, and report every detail to me afterward. Her fantasies can help us better understand her psychological state. Ted nodded, knowing that every word from Iris would be true, not fantasy. Understood. Great. Oh, and Mr. Theodore, it's important that you don't comment on our conversation with anyone, not even with close friends or family members. This type of social work requires absolute confidentiality. Of course you can. Count on my discretion. Clusa smiled, but there was something cold in that smile. I'm sure we're going to work very well together. Here's my card with my personal number. Call me any time, day or night, as soon as you have news. After lunch, Ted drove home with his mind racing. Clusa had confirmed all of Iris's suspicions about her methods. The job offer was clearly a way to buy him and silence him, and the amount offered showed how much they were earning from the criminal scheme. When he arrived home, he found Iris waiting anxiously in the kitchen. The girl jumped from the chair as soon as she saw him. How did it go? Did she suspect anything? I don't think so, but the situation is worse than we imagined. Ted sat down heavily. She offered me $100,000 a month to work with them. Iris's eyes widened. 100,000. That's a lot of money. It is. Enough money to solve all my problems. Iris was very quiet, studying Ted's face. Are you going to accept? What do you think? I think you're a good person, she said slowly. But I also know that everyone has problems. My mom always said that sometimes good people do bad things when they're desperate. The girl's honesty touched Ted deeply. Iris, I'll never betray you, no matter how much money they offer me. Promise? I promise, but now we need to be even more careful. Clusa will be watching this property. She expects me to try to gain your trust by leaving food and trying to talk to you. Then let's do exactly that, Iris said with determination. But in a way that she doesn't find out that we're already friends. How? You'll keep leaving food in the usual place. But I'll only pick it up when I'm sure no one's watching. And we'll pretend you're trying to convince me to trust you. What if she's watching and realizes you're already living here? Iris thought for a moment. I'll go back to sleeping in the vacant lot some nights. I'll leave tracks there for her to find. During the day, I'll stay hidden here, but always ready to escape through the basement if necessary. The girl's courage constantly impressed Ted. That's very dangerous for you. Everything is dangerous now. But at least that way, we can control the situation a little. That afternoon, they put the plan into action. Ted left food in the usual place, and Iris made a point of being seen briefly picking it up, always appearing nervous and ready to run. At night, she went back to sleeping in the vacant lot, while Ted stayed awake watching from the window, ready to intervene if something happened. The next morning, Clusa called early. Mr. Theodore, how did things go yesterday? I left food, as suggested. And I think the girl showed up during the night to get it, because it was gone when I woke up. Excellent. She's starting to trust. Keep it up. And try to leave the food a little closer to the house each day to gradually attract her. Good idea. I'll do that. And Mr. Theodore, keep your doors locked tight. Children like Iris sometimes try to break into houses when they feel threatened. If that happens, don't try to stop her alone. Call me immediately. After Clusa hung up, Ted realized that she was expecting exactly that, for Iris to try to hide in his house. It was a carefully planned trap. She wants you to find me in here, Iris said when he told her about the call. That way she can say you were hiding a runaway child, and she can use that to blackmail you. How do you know that? Because she's done it before. With the guy at the diner near the home, he tried to help a girl who ran away and Aunt Clusa found out. After that, he had to do everything she said, otherwise she was going to tell the police he was kidnapping children. Ted understood the perverse genius of the scheme. Clusa created situations where well-intentioned people legally compromised themselves by trying to help and then blackmailed them into working for her. So I can't let her find you here at all. Not like that. But maybe we can use this against her. How? Iris smiled for the first time in days, a smile that revealed a frightening intelligence for a 6-year-old. We're going to make her think she's captured me, but in reality, we're going to capture her. Iris, that's very dangerous. Everything is dangerous now, she repeated. But if we just keep running, she's going to end up catching us anyway. It's better to choose when and how it's going to happen. That night, while Iris slept once again in the vacant lot, Ted stayed awake planning. The girl was right. They needed to take the initiative. But how could two people without resources face a structured criminal organization? The answer came in the form of an unexpected call at 2 a.m. It was Vanderlei, the forger that Iris had mentioned. "Mr. Theodore, sorry to call so late. I'm Vanderlei Suarez, an accountant. Clusa gave me your contact information. We need to talk urgently about your financial situation." Vanderlei's voice on the phone carried an urgency that made Ted's blood run cold. It was 2 a.m, a time when only emergencies would justify a call. "What kind of financial situation?" Ted asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "I can't talk on the phone. It's too delicate. Can I come to your house now? I know it's late, but it's really urgent." Ted looked out the window towards the vacant lot, where he knew Iris was sleeping. If Vanderlei came now, he could discover the girl. Wouldn't it be better to talk tomorrow in a neutral location? "Mr. Theodore," Vanderlei's voice got lower, almost a whisper. "I'm calling from a payphone because my phone may be being monitored. What I need to tell you could save your life. Clusa has found out some things about you that... Will that change everything?" Ted's heart raced. "What kind of things?" "Your real financial situation, the debts, the failed investments, everything, and she's not happy about being deceived." Ted closed his eyes. Clusa had investigated his past and discovered that he was broke. That meant that the whole charade at lunch had been useless. "Where do you want to meet?" he asked, resigned. "I know a 24-hour diner on the highway. Mile marker 15. Manny's Diner. I can be there in half an hour." "I'll be there." Ted dressed quickly and went to the vacant lot where Iris was sleeping, hidden behind some rubble. The girl woke up instantly when he touched her lightly on the shoulder. "What happened?" she asked, alert. "Vanderlei found out that I'm broke. He wants to meet with me now." Iris sat up quickly. "It's a trap. At the home, when someone found out things about them, they always set up meetings in isolated places. But if I don't go, they'll know I'm hiding something." "I'm going with you," Iris said with determination. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous." "It's more dangerous to leave me here alone. If it's a trap, they could send someone to pick me up while you're gone." Ted realized she was right. "But how are we going to do it? I can't show up there with you. You go ahead. I'll hide in the car and listen to everything. If he tries anything, I'll run to get help." It was a risky plan, but Ted couldn't think of a better alternative. They headed to Manny's Diner, with Iris hidden in the back seat of the car, covered by a blanket. The diner was a simple place, frequented mainly by truck drivers. At midnight on a weekday, it was almost empty. Ted found Vanderlei sitting at a table in the back, away from the other people. Vanderlei Suarez was a thin man in his late 50s, with graying hair and thick glasses. His hands trembled slightly as he held his coffee cup, and he constantly looked around, clearly nervous. "Thanks for coming," he said when Ted sat down. "I know you must be confused by all of this." "I am indeed. Clusa found out about my financial situation." She found out and much more. Mr. Theodore, you have no idea what you're involved in. Vandelay leaned forward, lowering his voice. Cleusa isn't just a corrupt social worker. She works for Dalva Mendes, who controls half the illegal businesses in this area. Iris mentioned that name. Dalva Mendes. Vandelay stopped speaking, abruptly. How do you know about Iris? Ted realized he had made a serious mistake. Cleusa told me about a runaway girl with that name. No, that's not it. You said Iris mentioned Dalva. That means you talked to her. Vandelay's eyes narrowed. Where is she? I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Theodore, don't lie to me. I'm here trying to save you, but I need the truth. You talked to Iris, didn't you? Ted hesitated. There was something in Vandelay's voice that didn't sound like a threat, but like genuine desperation. Why does it matter? Because that girl is much more important than you imagine. She's not just a witness to our business. She saw something specific, something that can destroy Dalva's entire operation. What exactly did she see? Vandelay looked around again before continuing. 3 months ago, Dalva organized a special meeting at the foster home where Iris was. People came from out of state, international clients. They were negotiating not only children for illegal adoption, but also for other purposes. Ted felt nauseous. What other purposes? Child labor in other countries. Iris was hidden in a closet during the whole meeting. She heard names, values, destinations, information that could put Dalva in jail for the rest of her life. And Dalva knows that. Suspects. That's why all the pressure to find Iris. But there's something else. Vandelay paused, his hands trembling more. Dalva found out about your debts because she's known you for a long time. How so? Your failed investments weren't an accident, Mr. Theodore. Dalva manipulated the market so you would lose money. She was preparing you for years to be recruited into the organization. The revelation hit Ted like a bolt of lightning. My financial ruin was planned. Exactly. Dalva identifies successful entrepreneurs and breaks them financially, then recruits them when they're desperate. You've been one of her targets since 2018. Ted remembered the disastrous investments he had made, the consultants who had advised him, the opportunities that seemed too good to be true. It had all been an elaborate trap. So my getting closer to Cleusa was planned from the beginning. They knew you would eventually do anything for money. But I didn't. I protected Iris. And that's why I'm here, Vandelay said urgently. Because you made the right choice, and now you need to know the whole truth. What truth? Vandelay took a deep breath. I'm not really part of the organization. Mr. Theodore, I'm an undercover federal investigator. I've been working on this case for 2 years. Ted's world seemed to spin. You're a cop? A federal agent undercover. And Iris is the key to dismantling the entire operation. But Dalva found out my real identity. That's why the urgency of this conversation. How did she find out? Someone turned me in. Cleusa probably got suspicious when I started asking too many questions. The important thing is that I have maybe a few hours before they try to eliminate me. Ted processed all this information with difficulty. What now? Now I need you to take me to Iris. She's the only one who can provide enough details so that we can arrest the entire organization, but we have to be quick. How do I know I can trust you? Vandelay took a wallet out of his pocket and showed a federal ID. This is my real identity, Investigator Vandelay Suarez, FBI. Ted examined the document. It seemed genuine, but after discovering that his entire life had been manipulated, he didn't know who to trust anymore. If you're really a cop, why didn't you ask for official protection for Iris? Because the corruption goes much further than we imagined. Dalva has contacts within the local police itself. The only safe way to protect Iris is through a coordinated federal operation. It was at that moment that Ted heard a familiar noise coming from the parking lot, the sound of a car approaching rapidly. Through the window, he saw a black car stopping in front of the diner. "They found us," Vanderlei murmured, paling. "We need to get out of here now." Clouser got out of the car, accompanied by two men that Ted didn't recognize. They walked towards the entrance of the diner with determined steps. "Is there a back exit?" Ted asked. "There is, but they've probably already surrounded the place." Vanderlei stood up, clearly in a panic. "Mr. Theodore, where's Iris? I need to protect her before it's too late." Ted made a desperate decision. "She's in my car." Vanderlei's eyes widened. "You brought her here? That was very reckless." "I had no choice. Now how do we get out of here?" At that moment, Clouser entered the diner with her companions. Her eyes scanned the environment until they found the table where Ted and Vanderlei were sitting. A cold smile formed on her lips. "Mr. Theodore," she said, approaching calmly, "what a surprise to find you here. And talking to our dear Vanderlei, no less." "Clouser, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, let's resolve a more urgent matter." She turned to Vanderlei. "Agent Suarez, it wasn't very smart to set up a meeting in such an obvious place." Vanderlei swallowed hard. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. We discovered your real identity 3 days ago. And since then, we've just been waiting for you to lead us to Iris." Ted understood with horror that he had fallen into a trap. Vanderlei really was a federal agent, but Clouser knew that and had used that information to manipulate the situation. "Now," Clouser continued, "let's all go to the parking lot to have a more private conversation. And Mr. Theodore, I sincerely hope you brought our little Iris with you." Ted felt his blood run cold as he realized that Iris was waiting in the car, completely vulnerable. Clouser had orchestrated everything perfectly, using Vanderlei as bait to lure both him and the girl to an isolated location. "I don't know what you're talking about, any child," Ted said, trying to buy time. "Mr. Theodore, please, don't insult me by feigning innocence," Clouser signaled to the two men who accompanied her. "Marcio and Roberto have already checked your car. We know she's there." One of the men, a burly subject in his 40s, approached the table. "She was hidden in the back seat, but she ran away when she saw us coming. She must be hiding somewhere nearby." Ted felt immense relief. Iris had managed to escape, but at the same time, concern for her safety consumed him. A 6-year-old child, alone in the early morning hours on a busy highway. "Let's look for her," Clouser said coldly, "and you two are going to help us, whether you want to or not." Vanderlei stood up abruptly. "Clouser, I can't allow you to hurt an innocent child. As a federal agent, I have the authority to—" "You have no authority here," she interrupted. "Your operation was compromised days ago, and your superior, Director Marcos Vieira, has already been informed that you are collaborating with criminals." "That's a lie, is it? Then explain why you're here, alone, in the middle of the night, conspiring with a man who's hiding a runaway." "Oh, child," Clouser smiled cruelly. "I have photos of you talking, phone recordings. When this reaches your superiors, you're finished." Ted realized the perverse genius of the plan. Clouser had transformed both him and Vanderlei into criminals in the eyes of the law while discrediting the federal operation. "What do you want?" Ted asked. "Simple. Iris comes back with us. You two shut up forever about what you saw or heard, and everyone goes on with their lives." "And if we refuse?" "Then Vanderlei will be arrested for police corruption and collaboration with criminals. And you, Mr. Theodore, will be charged with kidnapping a minor. Both of you will spend decades in prison." At that moment, a noise came from the diner's kitchen. It was the sound of someone knocking over pots and pans. Everyone turned to look. "It must be the girl trying to hide," said Roberto, the other henchman. "I'll get her." "Wait," Clouser said. "Let's do this more carefully. We don't want to scare the poor thing." But as Roberto headed to the kitchen, they were surprised by a child's voice coming from a completely different direction. "I'm here," Iris said, appearing in the main entrance of the diner. "No need to look." Everyone turned to look at the girl. She was dusty and had leaves in her hair, but her eyes shone with a determination that impressed Ted. "Iris, no!" he shouted. "Run!" But the girl walked calmly towards the group, her small hands clenched into fists at her side. "Hello, Aunt Clusa," she said in a surprisingly firm voice. "Long time no see." "Iris, my dear," Clusa said instantly, changing to a fake maternal tone. "We were so worried about you. Come on, let's go home." "I don't have a home with you," Iris replied. "And I know you're not worried about me. You're afraid of what I know." Clusa's face hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about, child." "Yes, you do. You're afraid because I heard the conversation with the foreign men. I know the names, the places, the prices. I know everything." A tense silence took over the diner. Clusa exchanged glances with her henchman, clearly nervous. "Iris," said Vanderlei, trying to approach her, "you need to come with me. I'm a federal agent, and I can protect you." "I know who you are, Mr. Vanderlei," Iris replied. "I saw you at the home a few times, pretending to be an accountant. But I also know that Aunt Clusa found out about you." "How do you know that?" "Because I heard her talking on the phone yesterday. She said she was going to use you to capture me. Then she was going to get rid of you, too." Vanderlei paled. "Get rid of me how?" "The same way she got rid of Mr. Marcos, who worked in the kitchen, and Mrs. Fatima, who asked too many questions about the children who disappeared." Clusa lost her patience. "Enough talk. Marcio, Roberto, grab the girl, now." The two men moved towards Iris, but she did something unexpected. Instead of trying to run, she shouted as loud as she could, "Help! They're trying to kidnap me! Someone help me!" Her voice echoed through the diner and beyond, reaching the parking lot where there were some truck drivers. Immediately, several people began to move towards the diner. "You little brat!" Clusa snarled. "Marcio, get her quick!" But Iris was already running towards the kitchen, and this time she wasn't running blindly. Ted realized that she had a plan. "She's going to try to get out through the back," said Roberto. "I'll surround it." "No," said Iris, stopping suddenly and turning to them. "I'm not going to run anymore." She walked to the diner counter where there was an old phone. Before anyone could stop her, she dialed a number. "Hello, police. My name is Iris Maria Santos. I'm at Manny's Diner, mile marker 15 on the highway. There are people here trying to kidnap me." Clusa was furious. "Hang up that phone." But Iris continued speaking quickly. "The woman's name is Clusa Barreto. She works with child trafficking. There's a federal agent here too, Mr. Vanderlei Suarez. Please send help." Marcio finally managed to reach her and snatch the phone from her hands, but the damage was done. On the other end of the line, it was still possible to hear the attendant's voice asking for details. "You clever little brat," Clusa said, approaching Iris angrily. "You don't know what you've just done." "Yes, I do," Iris replied with impressive calmness. "I just made sure that a lot of people are going to know where we are and what's happening here." At that moment, several truck drivers entered the diner, attracted by Iris's screams. One of them, a large man in his 50s, looked at the situation and asked, "What's going on here? I heard a child calling for help." "Nothing much," Clusa said quickly, trying to regain her composure. "Just a family misunderstanding." "She's not my family," Iris said clearly. "She's trying to take me away by force." The truck driver looked from Clusa to Iris, then to the two men who clearly looked like henchmen. "Girl, is this woman your mother?" "No, she's a criminal who sold several children, and these men work for her." Hey, said another truck driver entering the diner. "I heard sirens in the distance. Police must be coming here." Panic took over Clusa's group. "We need to get out of here now," she murmured to her men. "And leave the girl?" asked Marcio. "We have no choice. The situation is out of control." But Iris made one more surprising move. "Aunt Clusa," she said loud enough for everyone to hear, "do you want me to tell these people about the meeting at Mrs. Dalva's house, about the men who came from other countries to buy children?" Clusa turned livid. "Shut up." "Or about how you falsified documents at the Mendez County Clerk's office? Or about Blue Rock Construction that you used to launder money?" "Shut up," I said. But Iris continued, her clear voice reaching everyone present. "Or about how you killed Mr. Marcos and Mrs. Fatima because they found out about you." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of sirens approaching rapidly. Clusa looked at the door, then at Iris, then at her men. "Let's go, now," she said. "What about her?" asked Roberto, pointing at Iris. "Leave her. But this isn't over," Clusa said, looking directly at Iris with eyes full of hatred. "Not by a long shot." The three ran out of the diner through the back exit, leaving Ted, Vanderlei, and Iris surrounded by confused truck drivers and the sounds of sirens getting closer and closer. "Girl," said the first truck driver, crouching in front of Iris, "are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "No, sir, but they were going to hurt me. They hurt a lot of children." Vanderlei approached Iris. "Iris, what you did was very brave, but now I need you to tell me everything you know, with details. It's the only way we can arrest these people." Iris looked at Ted, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay," she said, "but there's a lot of stuff. It's going to take a while." "We have time," Vanderlei said, "and now we have protection too." The sirens stopped outside the diner and several police cars positioned themselves in the parking lot. For the first time in weeks, Ted felt that maybe they were really safe. But when he looked out the window and saw Clusa watching from afar, before disappearing into the darkness, he knew that the battle was just beginning. The Pleasantville police station had never seen such activity in the middle of the night. Ted, Vanderlei, and Iris were led to a special interrogation room, while a team of FBI investigators arrived from Washington, D.C. to take over the case. Director Marcos Vieira, a man in his 50s with graying hair and a military posture, commanded the local operation. He looked at Vanderlei with a mixture of relief and concern. "Agent Soares, we received your emergency message 2 hours ago. We thought you had been kidnapped, or worse." "I almost was," Vanderlei replied, still shaken by the night's events. "Clusa discovered my identity days ago and was using it against me." "And this is the girl you spoke about in the reports?" the director asked, looking at Iris with curiosity. Iris was sitting in a chair too big for her, swinging her legs nervously. Despite all the courage shown at the diner, now she looked like a scared child again. "Yes," Vanderlei said. "Iris is the key witness to the entire operation. She witnessed meetings, heard conversations, memorized details that can dismantle the entire network." The director knelt in front of Iris. "Hello, Iris. I'm Director Marcos. Can you tell me what you know about these bad people?" Iris looked at Ted, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes, I can, but it's a lot." "We have all night," the director said gently. For the next 3 hours, Iris reported with impressive detail everything she had witnessed at the foster home. Names, dates, values, specific conversations. Her photographic memory revealed a criminal network much more extensive than anyone imagined. "Mrs. Dalva always talked about special clients," Iris said. "They were people who came from other states and paid a lot of money for specific children." "Specific how?" asked the director. "Children with special characteristics. Eye color, hair color, exact age. They had catalogs with photos and information." Ted felt nauseous listening to the details. "They photographed the children. They photographed and filmed them. Mr. Vanderlei was always present in those sessions, pretending he was taking care of the financial part," Vanderlei confirmed. It was part of my infiltration. I needed to gain their total trust to discover all aspects of the operation. And the Mendez County Clerk's office? Asked the director. Did you see them falsifying documents there? I saw it several times. Mrs. Dalva has a special room in the back of the county clerk's office where they make the fake papers. She always said she had friends in the judiciary who validated everything. The director exchanged worried glances. With Vanderlei, that means the corruption goes much further than we imagined. Iris, said Vanderlei, do you remember specific names of these friends that Dalva mentioned? I remember some. There's Dr. Fabio, who she always said solved problems with judges, and Dr. Carla, who worked at the district attorney's office and adjusted processes. The director noted the names quickly. Anyone else? There's Colonel Ribeiro, too. He sometimes came to pick up money in suitcases. Aunt Cleusa always got very nervous when he showed up. And a colonel from the state police, murmured the director. That explains why we never had successful investigations against them. As Iris continued reporting, Ted realized the magnitude of what they had gotten involved in. It wasn't just an illegal adoption scheme. It was a network of corruption that involved county clerks' offices, courts, the police, and authorities at various levels. Director, Ted said, how safe are we here? If they have contacts in the police, this operation is being coordinated directly by the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., the director replied. Only people of absolute trust are involved. At that moment, a FBI investigator entered the room. It was a woman in her 40s, dark hair tied in a bun with an air of authority. Agent Patricia Montero, FBI, she introduced herself. I came specifically to coordinate this case. She sat down and looked directly at Iris. Young lady, you did something very brave tonight, but I need you to understand something important. From now on, you're under federal protection. That means you can't go back to a normal home yet. What kind of protection? Ted asked. Safe house, temporary identity, 24-hour security, at least until we arrest everyone involved. Iris was silent for a moment. And Ted? Is he going to stay with me? The investigator looked at Ted. Mr. Theodore is also at risk. They know he helped you. But she hesitated. But what? Ted asked. There are some complicated legal issues about your situation. Technically, you were hiding a minor who had run away from an official institution. Official institution? Ted was indignant. It was a den of criminals. I know that, and you know that, but legally the foster home had a license to operate. Cleusa had authorization to collect runaway children. On paper, everything looked legal. Vanderlei spoke up. Agent, Mr. Theodore acted to protect the girl. That should count in his favor. And it does. But Cleusa can use that against him if we're not careful. Iris stood up from the chair. I don't want Ted to get in trouble for helping me. He's a good person. No one's going to have unnecessary problems, the investigator said. But we need to be strategic about how we proceed. It was then that the director received a call that changed everything. After a few minutes of tense conversation, he hung up with a grim expression. We have a problem, he announced. Cleusa turned herself in at the central precinct an hour ago. Turned herself in? Asked Vanderlei, surprised. She's claiming that she was kidnapped by Ted and forced to participate in the meeting at the diner. Says Iris was manipulated into telling false stories against her. Ted felt the ground collapse under his feet. That's absurd. And there's more, continued the director. She presented documents proving that the foster home where she kept the children had all the necessary licenses, and brought witnesses who say that Iris has always been a troubled child who made up stories. Witnesses? Asked the investigator. 3 employees from the foster home, 2 neighbors, and a doctor who supposedly treated Iris for psychological disorders. Iris turned very pale. They're lying. Those employees were part of the scheme. I believe you, the investigator said, but Cleusa is anticipating us. She knows you're going to testify against her, so she's creating an alternative version of the facts. And is it working? Ted asked. The judge who's going to analyze the preliminary case is known to be very strict with evidence. If he believes Cleusa's version... What judge? Asked Vanderlei. Dr. Fabio Mendes. A glacial silence took over the room. Iris whispered, "He's one of Mrs. Dalva's friends. The Dr. Fabio I told you about." The investigator closed her eyes. "Then we're dealing with a completely compromised system." "What does that mean for Iris?" Ted asked. "It means that if she testifies officially now, she can be discredited as a witness, and if she's discredited, they can ask that she be returned to the foster home," Vanderlei completed. Iris began to tremble. "I don't want to go back there. Please don't make me go back." Ted knelt beside her. "That's not going to happen, I promise." "Boo, how can you promise that?" asked the investigator. "If the justice system determines..." "Then we're going to run," Ted said with determination. "I'm not going to let this child go back to that place." "Mr. Theodore, that would be kidnapping." "A minor, you would be wanted nationally." "I don't care." Iris looked at Ted with tears in her eyes. "Would you do that for me?" "I'd do anything for you." The investigator observed the interaction between the two with attention. "There's something that you haven't understood yet," she said slowly. "What?" asked Ted and Vanderlei simultaneously. "Cleusa didn't turn herself in by chance today. She knew exactly which judge would be on duty, which director would be coordinating the case, which prosecutor would analyze the documents." "How did she know that?" "Because someone from inside the federal operation passed information to her." Vanderlei paled. "There's an informant on our own team?" "There is, and that means none of you are safe here." And at that moment, the lights at the police station flickered and then went out completely. Emergency generators turned on after a few seconds, but the message was clear. "They know where we are," murmured the investigator, putting her hand on her gun. From the hallway came the sound of quick footsteps and whispering voices. Someone had entered the police station during the blackout. "We need to get out of here now," she said, standing up. "Everyone." Agent Patricia drew her weapon and positioned herself in front of the interrogation room door. The steps in the hallway were approaching, accompanied by low voices whispering urgent instructions. "Emergency exit," she murmured to Vanderlei. "Where is it?" "In the back of the building, crossing the file room," he replied, also drawing his weapon. Ted picked up Iris, feeling her small body trembling against his chest. "Everything's going to be all right," he whispered, trying to convey a confidence that he didn't feel. "I know it won't," Iris replied with brutal honesty. "They always get what they want." The doorknob began to turn slowly. Patricia signaled everyone to position themselves behind her. Ted carried Iris to the furthest corner of the room using a table as protection. The door opened, and 3 figures entered silently. To everyone's surprise, they weren't Cleusa's henchmen. They were uniformed police officers from the police station itself. "Agent Montero," said one of them, a sergeant in his 30s. "Order from the director to transfer the interviewees to a safer location." Patricia didn't lower her gun. "What director?" "Marcos has been here for 5 minutes." "Regional director." From Washington, D.C., a federal order for immediate transfer came in. Vanderlei approached cautiously. "Sergeant Costa, I've been working with you in this city for 2 years. Since when are federal transfers done in the middle of the night?" The sergeant hesitated for a split second before answering. "These are special cases, Agent. You know how it is." It was that hesitation that revealed everything. Iris, still in Ted's arms, whispered in his ear. "The sergeant was at the foster home last week. I saw him talking to Aunt Cleusa." Ted repeated the information quietly to Patricia, who kept her gun pointed. "Sergeant, I need to see the official transfer order." "Agent, we don't have time for bureaucracy. The situation is an emergency." Then you won't mind waiting for Director Marcos to confirm it personally. The three police officers exchanged nervous glances. The second officer, an older corporal, placed his hand discreetly on his gun. "Agent," said Sergeant Costa, completely changing his tone of voice. "It's going to be easier if you cooperate. We don't want to hurt anyone, especially the child." Patricia understood that the negotiation was over. "Vanderlei, when I count to 3, you take Ted and the girl and run to the emergency exit." "What about you?" "I'll hold them here." "I'm not going to leave you alone. It's a federal order." Ted, still holding Iris, whispered urgently, "There's another way. Iris told me she knows this police station." Everyone looked at the girl, who nodded. "I came here once with Aunt Nusa when she had to sign papers. There's a secret passage that connects the file room to the parking lot." "Secret passage?" asked Patricia. "It's not really secret," Iris explained quickly. "It's a maintenance corridor that goes under the building. The entrance is behind the dead files bookshelf." Sergeant Costa was getting impatient. "Agent, our patience has a limit." "1," counted Patricia. Vanderlei positioned himself next to Ted, prepared to run. 2. At that moment, Director Marcos's voice echoed through the hallway. "Sergeant Costa, what are you doing there?" The three corrupt police officers turned, distracted. It was the chance that Patricia was waiting for. 3, run! Vanderlei opened the back door of the room while Ted ran with Iris. Patricia fired a shot into the air, causing enough confusion for them to gain a few precious seconds. They ran through the hallway towards the file room, hearing screams and sounds of struggle behind them. Director Marcos was confronting the corrupt police officers, but other steps were approaching rapidly. "The bookshelf!" Iris shouted, pointing to a tall metal bookshelf at the back of the file room. Vanderlei pushed it hard, revealing a narrow opening in the wall. It was a low-maintenance corridor, clearly not designed for adults. "You first," Ted said, putting Iris on the ground. The girl entered the corridor without hesitating. Ted followed her, then Vanderlei. It was a tight space, forcing them to crawl, but Iris moved confidently in the darkness. "This way," she whispered. "The corridor makes a turn and then goes up." Behind them, they heard voices in the file room. Someone had discovered the passage. "They're coming," murmured Vanderlei. "Almost there," Iris replied. "A little more." The corridor actually went up and ended in a ventilation grate that opened into the parking lot. Vanderlei forced it until it broke, and the three emerged into the cold night. "My car," said Vanderlei, pointing to a black Civic parked on the street. They ran towards the vehicle, but when Vanderlei tried to start it, the engine didn't work. "Sabotaged," he murmured, quickly checking the engine. "They cut the wires." "What now?" Ted asked. It was Iris who gave the answer. "Let's go to the church." "What church?" "Downtown church. Father Michael always said that the house of God is a safe place for children in danger." "Iris, how do you know Father Michael?" "He visited the foster and home sometimes. He was the only person who asked real questions about how we were doing. Aunt Clusa always got nervous when he showed up." Ted made a decision. "We're going on foot. Is it far?" "About 20 minutes, walking fast." They began to walk through the dark streets of Pleasantville, avoiding the main avenues. Iris guided the way with impressive precision, knowing every alley and shortcut in the town. "How do you know how to get around so well here?" Vanderlei asked. "When I ran away from the foster home, I spent 3 days walking around the town. Before I found the vacant lot near Ted's house, I learned all the ways." As they walked, Ted couldn't stop thinking about the betrayal within the police itself. "Vanderlei, how many people knew about your operation?" "Only my direct superiors in Washington, D.C., and some trusted investigators. At least that's what I thought. Then the leak came from very high up." "Looks like it. And that means this: operation may have been compromised from the beginning." Iris stopped walking suddenly. "Wait, someone's following us." The two men looked back and saw two dark figures about 2 blocks away, walking in the same direction as them. "It could just be normal people," Ted said hopefully. "No," Iris said. "They're following exactly our path even when we change direction." Vanderlei confirmed the girl's observation. "She's right. They're 2 men. And they speed up when we speed up." "How far is the church?" Ted asked. "About 10 blocks," Iris replied. "But I know a place where we can hide." She guided them through a narrow alley that ended in the backyard of an abandoned house. It was a dark place, full of rubble, but offered cover. "How do you know this place?" whispered Vanderlei. "I slept here one night when I was running away. The house has been empty for years." They hid behind a low wall and watched the 2 men pass by on the main street. It was Marzio and Roberto, Clusa's henchmen. "How did they find us?" murmured Ted. "They must have followed our trail from the police station," Vanderlei replied. Or what? Or someone is tracking one of us." Vanderlei checked his cell phone and turned it off immediately. "They may be tracking my official phone." Iris pulled on the sleeve of Ted's coat. "There's one more thing you need to know." "What now?" "When I was at the foster home, I heard Aunt Clusa talking about a plan B if anyone tried to report them." "What kind of plan?" "They have fake documents ready to prove that I'm mentally ill, and they have a doctor who's going to say that everything I tell are hallucinations." Vanderlei turned pale. "What doctor?" "Dr. Augusto Ferreira. He has a private clinic and always helps Aunt Cleusa when she needs it." "Iris," Ted said slowly, "that means that even if we get to the church, even if Father Michael protects us, they can use those documents to take you back." "I know. That's why I have to tell everything I know before they stop me from talking." "How so?" "I need to record a full statement with all the details and send it to someone they can't control." "To whom?" Iris smiled for the first time in hours. "To the woman who did reporting on missing children. She came to the foster home a few times, and Aunt Clusa always kicked her out. I think she can help us." "Do you remember her name?" "Journalist Sandra Oliveira, from the Washington, D.C. newspaper. She always said that children had the right to tell their truth." Vanderlei nodded thoughtfully. "It could work. If we can get the statement to the press before they use the fake documents." "Then let's do it," Ted said. "But first, we have to get to the church alive." They waited for the henchmen to move away and returned to walking through the dark streets, knowing that each step led them closer to both salvation and final danger. The downtown church rose imposingly in the central square of Pleasantville, its Gothic towers standing out against the dark night sky. It was almost 4 in the morning when Ted, Vanderlei, and Iris finally arrived at the gates of the temple, exhausted after 40 minutes of tortuous walk through the town's alleys. "Father Michael lives in the back of the church," whispered Iris, guiding them through a side alley. "There's a small house connected to the sacristy." Vanderlei looked nervously back. "I don't see anyone following us anymore, but that doesn't mean we're safe." "Father Michael will help us," Iris said with conviction. "He's different from the other adults. He really cares about the children." They arrived at a simple wooden door in the back of the church. Iris knocked softly, using a specific pattern. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks. "How do you know that code?" asked Ted. "The father taught it to some children at the foster home, said that if we ever needed real help, just knock like that and he would know it was urgent." After a few minutes, the door opened, revealing a man of about 60 years old, graying hair and gentle eyes behind small glasses. He wore a simple robe and carried a lit candle. "Iris?" said Father Michael, surprised. "My child, what are you doing here at this hour? And where have you been? I was very worried when I heard you had run away from the foster home." "Father, I need your help," Iris said urgently. "These are my friends, Ted and Vanderlei. We're in danger. The father looked at the two men with attention. "Come in quickly, it's not safe to stay on the street." They entered a small but cozy house, with simple furniture and walls covered in books. Father Michael lit a lamp and invited them to sit around a wooden table. "Now tell me what's happening," he said, his paternal tone making Iris relax for the first time in hours. For the next 30 minutes, Iris told her whole story to the father. Unlike the police officers who had questioned every detail, Father Michael listened in silence, only nodding occasionally and asking gentle questions to clarify specific points. "Iris, my dear," he said when she finished, "I always knew that something was wrong at that foster home. My visits were always controlled. I never managed to talk to the children alone." "You tried to protect us," said Iris. "Aunt Clouseau always got nervous when you showed up. And now, what do you need from me?" Vandelay spoke up. "Father, Iris needs to record a full statement before they use fake documents to discredit her. Do you know any way to contact journalist Sandra Oliveira?" "Sandra, of course I know. She did several reports on problems with charities in the area, a courageous woman. Can you call her?" Father Michael consulted an old clock on the wall. "It's 4:30 in the morning, but Sandra always said that I could look for her at any time in urgent cases." He went to an old phone in the kitchen and dialed a number. After a few rings, someone answered. "Sandra? It's Father Michael. I know it's very early, but I have an emergency situation here." "Yes, it's about children." "Can you come to the church now? It's extremely urgent." Ted heard a female voice on the other end, asking quick questions. "Yes, I have a child here who was a victim of child trafficking. She has information that can dismantle an entire network." "No, I can't talk on the phone." 40 minutes? Perfect." When he hung up, the father turned to them. "Sandra's coming here. She's going to bring professional recording equipment." "Father," said Ted, "there's something else you need to know. The corruption in this case goes much further than we imagined. It involves police officers, judges, district attorneys." "That doesn't surprise me," the father replied sadly. "For years I've noticed that certain people in positions of power protect interests that have nothing to do with justice." Iris approached. The father. "Aren't you afraid to help us? They can harm you too." Father Michael smiled gently. "My child, when I became a priest, I promised to protect the innocent and fight against evil. I can't break that promise now." While they waited for Sandra to arrive, Iris began to organize mentally everything she was going to report. Vandelay helped her, asking specific questions about dates, places, and people. "Iris, do you remember the specific conversation between Dalva and the foreign clients?" he asked. "I remember everything. They talked about special orders and about children who were going to farms in other countries. The older man, who spoke with a strange accent, said he needed small and obedient workers." Ted felt nauseous. Child slave labor. Worse than... "And that," said Iris with an astonishingly sad maturity. "They talked about children who wouldn't come home, and Mrs. Dalva said that was normal in the international business." Father Michael closed his eyes, clearly moved. "How can a 6-year-old child have witnessed such evil?" "Because no one paid attention to me," Iris replied simply. "Bad adults always think that children don't understand anything. But I understand everything, and I remember everything." At 5:15 in the morning, Sandra Oliveira arrived at the church. She was a woman in her 40s, short brown hair, wearing jeans and carrying a large bag with equipment. Her eyes showed determination and sharp intelligence. "Father Michael," she said, entering quickly, "I received your message and, my God, it's Iris." "You know me?" Iris asked, surprised. "Of course I know you. I've been investigating disappearances of children in the area for 2 years. You're one of the children I was looking for." Sandra knelt in front of Iris. "Honey, are you okay? I'm here to help you. I know. Father Michael always said that you were a good person who wanted to protect children." Sandra quickly assembled her professional recording equipment. Iris, I'm going to record everything you want to tell. This statement will go directly to the newspaper and to federal authorities in Washington, D.C., who aren't involved in the local corruption. Before we start, interrupted Vanderlei, I need you to know that this recording may put us in even greater danger. Once this is public, they'll try everything to silence us. I understand the risks, said Sandra, but if we don't do this now, how many other children are going to suffer? Iris positioned herself in front of the microphone. I'm ready. I want to tell everything. For the next 2 hours, Iris gave the most detailed and courageous statement that anyone present had ever heard. Names, dates, locations, specific conversations, values mentioned, methods of falsifying documents, everything coming out of the extraordinary memory of a 6-year-old child. Sandra asked precise questions, like an experienced journalist, but always with maternal gentleness. Gradually, she built a complete picture of the criminal operation. Iris, can you physically describe the foreign clients you saw? The older one had white hair and a scar on his forehead. He spoke English with an accent that Aunt Clusa said was from England. The younger one was blonde and always wore a blue suit, and there was a woman too who didn't speak English but understood everything. Do you remember any names they mentioned? The older man was called Mr. Henry. The blonde one they called Klaus, and the woman, let me think, Anna Marie, but with a different accent. Ted was impressed with every detail that Iris remembered. It was as if she had recorded all the conversations in her mind. And about the fake documents, Iris, did you see how they did them? I saw the fake Vanderlei, not you, the other Vanderlei who was their real accountant, messing with the computer. He copied real documents and changed the names, said he had templates of birth certificates and could make any ID. When the recording was finished, Sandra saved everything on multiple devices. Iris, you're the bravest child I've ever known. This statement is going to help save many other children. What now? Ted asked. Now I take this straight to Washington, D.C. I have contacts at the FBI who aren't involved in the local corruption. It was at that moment that they heard noises from outside the church. Multiple footsteps, whispering voices, sounds of equipment being prepared. Father Michael went to the window and peered through the curtains. There are at least 6 men surrounding the church and 2 cars blocking the exits. They found us, murmured Vanderlei. Sandra quickly grabbed her equipment. Father, is there another exit? There's a tunnel that connects the crypt of the church to the cemetery across the square. It was built 100 years ago, and few people know it exists. Then let's go, said Ted, picking up Iris. But as they headed to the crypt, an amplified voice echoed from outside. Father Michael, we know you're in there. We have the church completely surrounded. Send the child out, and no one will get hurt. It was Clusa's voice, cold and calculating as always. Clusa's voice echoed again through the loudspeaker, more threatening this time. Father Michael, you have 5 minutes to hand over the child. After that, we don't guarantee anyone's safety. Father Michael positioned himself firmly in front of the group. I'm not going to hand over an innocent child to criminals. Never. Father, said Sandra urgently, we need to get out of here now. The tunnel you mentioned, where's the entrance? In the crypt behind the main altar, but it's dangerous. No one has used that passage in decades. Iris pulled on the sleeve of Ted's coat. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. Maybe I should. Don't even think about it, interrupted Ted firmly. We've come this far together, and we're going to get out together. Vanderlei checked his gun, which had only a few bullets remaining. How many men did you count, Father? At least 6 outside. But there may be more hidden. And that tunnel, where exactly does it lead? To the municipal cemetery, about 200 yards from here. The exit is disguised behind an old mausoleum. Sandra finished packing her equipment. The material is already being sent automatically to the cloud. Even if something happens to us, Iris's statement will reach the federal authorities. They headed quickly to the church crypt. It was a dark space, illuminated only by votive candles, with ancient graves of priests and benefactors of the church. Father Michael guided them to a specific tombstone at the back of the crypt. "Help me move this stone," he said, pointing to a marble slab with worn Latin inscriptions. With concerted effort, they managed to slide the tombstone, revealing a dark hole that descended in uneven stone steps. A smell of dampness and old earth rose from the tunnel. "Looks pretty old," commented Sandra, illuminating the passage with a small flashlight. "It was built during the time of the Civil War, when the church served as a refuge for runaway slaves," explained Father Michael. "Our predecessors knew that sometimes it's necessary to challenge corrupt authorities to protect the innocent." Outside, they heard new noises, more cars arriving, voices giving orders, equipment being positioned. "They're preparing to invade," said Vanderlei. "We have to go now." Iris was the first to descend, followed by Sandra with her equipment. Ted and Vanderlei went down next, while Father Michael stayed to reposition the tombstone. "Father, come with us," insisted Ted. "I can't abandon my church, and someone needs to buy you time. It's very dangerous. They can hurt you." "My child," said the father, looking at Iris with paternal affection, "there are things more important than our personal safety. Protecting an innocent child is one of them." The tunnel was narrow and low, forcing the adults to bend over as they walked. The walls were of rough stone, with vegetation growing between the cracks. Sandra illuminated the way with her flashlight, while Ted carried Iris in the most difficult parts. "Are you all right?" he whispered to the girl. "I'm fine, just thinking about Father Michael. I hope he stays safe. He's a brave man. He'll find a way to protect himself." Behind them, they heard muffled sounds that seemed to come from the church, screams, doors slamming, furniture being moved. Clusa and her men had invaded the temple. "Walk faster," urged Vanderlei. "They'll soon discover the crypt." The tunnel made several turns and went up and down, following the natural terrain. At some points, they had to pass through puddles of water accumulated from old rains. Sandra mentally documented the path, thinking about the report she would write about all of this. After 20 minutes of tortuous walk, they finally saw a crack of natural light ahead. It was the exit of the tunnel, disguised by vegetation that grew around the mausoleum. Vanderlei went out first, checking if the area was safe. The cemetery was silent, with only the sound of birds beginning to sing with the dawn. "Area clear," he whispered, helping the others out. They were behind an old marble mausoleum, surrounded by centuries-old tombs and tall trees. On the other side of the cemetery, they could see the square where the church was, and several of Klaus's cars parked. "Ooh, what now?" asked Sandra. "My car is parked near the church. I can't get to it. We need transportation," said Ted, "and a safe place to go." It was then that Iris pointed in a specific direction. "I know someone who can help us." "Who?" "Mrs. Mercedes, who has the bakery on Flower Street. She was always kind to me when I collected cans around there, and she hates Aunt Clusa." "Why does she hate Clusa?" "Because her daughter Julia disappeared 2 years ago. Mrs. Mercedes always said that she was sure that Aunt Clusa knew what had happened to her." Vanderlei understood immediately. Julia may have been one of the trafficked children. Probably. "And if Mrs. Mercedes knows that we have information about it, she'll help us," Sandra completed. They began to walk through the streets of the cemetery towards Flower Street, keeping hidden among the tombs whenever possible. The sun was rising, and soon there would be more movement on the streets, which could both help them blend in and make it easier for them to be recognized. When they arrived at Mrs. Mercedes's bakery, they found a woman in her 50s, robust and with a severe expression, preparing the first loaves of bread for the day. She looked suspiciously at the unusual group that appeared at her door. "Mrs. Mercedes," said Iris, approaching timidly, "do you remember me? I'm Iris, who collected cans around here. The woman's face lit up with recognition and concern. "Iris, my child, where have you been? Everyone was looking for you." "Not everyone, Mrs. Mercedes. The bad people were looking for me to hurt me, but these good people protected me." The baker looked at Ted, Vanderlei, and Sandra with attention. "And you are?" "People who are trying to help Iris and other children," Sandra replied. "And who have information about what really happened to your daughter Julia." Mrs. Mercedes turned pale. "You know about my Julia?" "We do," said Iris gently. "And I can tell you what I saw and heard about her." With tears in her eyes, Mrs. Mercedes invited them in. The bakery was small but cozy, with the smell of fresh bread and strong coffee. She led them to a back room, away from the view of anyone passing on the street. "Tell me everything," she said, serving coffee to everyone. Iris, with her extraordinary sensitivity, held Mrs. Mercedes's hand before speaking. "Your daughter was at the foster home with me. She was very beautiful and very intelligent. Aunt Clusa always said that she was special." "What happened to her?" "6 months ago, some foreign men came. They chose 5 children, including Julia. I heard them saying that she was going to a special family in another country." Mrs. Mercedes covered her face with her hands, sobbing, "My girl, my poor girl." "Mrs. Mercedes," said Sandra gently, "we need your help to prevent this from happening to other children." Iris recorded a full statement, "But we're being pursued." "Anything," said the baker immediately. "Anything so that other mothers don't go through what I went through. We need a place to stay hidden for a few hours, until we can get safe contact with federal authorities. You can stay here. I have a basement where we keep flour and sugar. No one would find you there." At that moment, they heard cars stopping in front of the bakery. Through the window, they saw Marzio and Roberto getting out of a black vehicle. "They found us," murmured Vanderlei. Mrs. Mercedes stood up with determination. "Go down to the basement now. I'll take care of this." "Mrs. Mercedes, they're dangerous," warned Ted. "And I'm a mother who lost her daughter to these monsters. You don't know what a mother is capable of when she fights for justice." They went down quickly to the basement, while Mrs. Mercedes went to answer the henchman at the door of the bakery. From downstairs, they could hear the conversation. "Good morning, Mom. We're looking for some people who may have passed by here, a child and 3 adults. I haven't seen anyone like that around here. I've been working since 4 in the morning, and I've only seen the usual customers. Are you sure? It's very important that we find them." "I'm absolutely sure, and now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." Mrs. Mercedes's voice was firm and convincing. The men asked a few more questions, but eventually left. When she went down to the basement, she found the group tense but relieved. "They're gone for now," she said, "but they'll be back. We have to think of a plan." It was then that Sandra had an idea. "Mrs. Mercedes, do you know other parents who have lost children in a mysterious way?" "I know several. Why?" "Because it's time to turn this into a public battle. If we can gather all the affected families, create pressure from the media and public opinion." "You want to make a collective denunciation?" asked Vanderlei. "Exactly. A united front that they can't stifle or discredit easily." Iris approached. "Mrs. Mercedes, would you do that? Would you help other families discover the truth?" "I'd do anything, my dear. Anything for these criminals to pay for what they did. It was the beginning of the end, not just a desperate escape, but the beginning of an organized battle for justice." During the next few hours, the basement of Mrs. Mercedes's bakery was transformed into the operations center of a silent revolution. The baker had discreetly contacted other mothers in the area who had lost children in mysterious circumstances, and one by one they began to arrive. Mrs. Fatima arrived first, a thin woman in her 40s, carrying a folder with documents. "Mercedes, you said you had news about the missing children." "I have more than news. I have the truth," Mercedes replied, guiding her to the basement. When Fatima saw Iris, her eyes filled with tears. "You're the girl who was with my Pedro at the foster home?" Iris nodded. "Pedro was my friend. He always shared his food with me when I was hungry." "What happened to him?" "He was chosen by the foreign men, just like Julia. I heard Aunt Clusa saying that he was going to a coffee farm in another country to learn a trade." Fatima sat heavily on a box of flour. "My boy, slave labor." In the following minutes, 5 more mothers arrived. Mrs. Rosa, who had lost her daughter Camila, Mrs. Teresa, whose granddaughter had disappeared, Mrs. Lucia, whose adopted son disappeared from the foster home, Mrs. Aparecida, who had lost 2 orphan nephews, and Mrs. Sebastiana, an elderly woman who cared for street children and had seen several of them disappear. Sandra watched the meeting with growing emotion. "This is the story that the United States needs to hear," she murmured to Vanderlei. Iris positioned herself in the center of the group of mothers, and with a courage that impressed everyone, began to tell what she knew about each missing child. Her extraordinary memory revealed details that the mothers themselves didn't know. "Camilla was taken a year ago," she told Mrs. Rosa. "I heard Aunt Clusa saying that she was going to a rich family in Portugal who wanted an exotic girl with curly hair." "Are you sure of that?" asked Rosa, crying. "I am. I remember everything. And more, they charged $100,000 for her because they said that children with special characteristics were worth more." Mrs. Teresa held Iris's hands. "And my little granddaughter Sophia. She was only 5 years old." "Sophia?" Iris paused, clearly struggling with painful memories. "Sophia was the first one I saw being taken. She went to a family in Spain, but she cried a lot and didn't want to go. They had to give her medicine to make her sleep." The silence that followed was broken only by the mother's sobs. Ted approached Iris and hugged her, feeling the emotional weight that child carried. "Mothers," said Sandra, standing up, "I know that hearing these truths is devastating, but now we have a chance to do justice. Iris recorded a full statement that can put all these criminals in jail." "What do we need to do?" asked Mrs. Mercedes. "We need to make this public in a way that they can't control. A protest, collective press conference, pressure on social media, something too big to be silenced." Vanderlei spoke up. "The problem is that they have contacts within the local police and justice system. If we don't do this the right way, they're going to try to intimidate us," Mrs. Fatima completed. "They've already tried before when I started asking questions about Pedro." "How did they try to intimidate you?" asked Sandra. "Anonymous calls in the middle of the night, strange cars passing in front of my house, a man who showed up saying that I was asking too many questions." Other mothers confirmed similar experiences. All had been silenced by fear when they tried to investigate the disappearance of their children. "But now there are many of us," said Mrs. Mercedes with determination, "and we have real proof." Iris pulled on Sandra's coat sleeve. "Can I suggest something?" "Of course, honey." "At the foster home, I heard Aunt Clusa talking about an event that she always feared, a public meeting of families of missing children. She said that if that happened, it would be the end of everything." "Why did she fear that specifically?" asked Vanderlei. "Because it would attract the attention of the national press, not just local, and because it would show a pattern. Many children disappearing from the same area, all passing through the same foster home." Sandra nodded thoughtfully. "A public demonstration in the main square, with all the families together, posters with photos of the children, live testimonies. And I would transmit everything live over the internet," she added, "directly to my national network of journalists." "When?" asked Mrs. Rosa. "This afternoon. We can't give them time to organize." Mrs. Sebastiana, who had remained quiet then spoke with a trembling voice. "Are you sure this is going to work? These people are very powerful." "That's why we need to act," replied Mrs. Mercedes. The more we wait, the more children are going to suffer. While the mothers planned the demonstration, Ted had a private conversation with Iris in a corner of the basement. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. "It's going to be very difficult for you to appear in public." "I'm sure. If I don't speak, who's going to speak for the other children who are still suffering?" "You're very brave." "I'm not brave. I just don't want other children to go through what I went through." Ted felt a wave of pride and love for that extraordinary girl. "Iris, no matter what happens today, I want you to know one thing." "What?" "You changed my life. Before I met you, I was lost, broken, without purpose. You gave me a reason to be a better person. You were already a good person. You just needed someone to remind you of that." At 2 in the afternoon, the group began to prepare to leave the bakery. Sandra had contacted other trusted journalists who were already on their way to Pleasantville. Vanderlei managed to contact superiors in Washington, D.C., who guaranteed federal protection during the demonstration. "One last thing," said Mrs. Mercedes to the group. "Clouser and her henchmen are going to try to prevent this. They may try to intimidate us, attack us, or worse." "We're prepared for that," said Mrs. Fatima. "We've already lost our children. We have nothing more to lose, and we have a lot to gain," added Mrs. Rosa. "Justice, truth, the chance that other families won't go through what we went through." When they left the bakery, there was already a small crowd forming in the square. The news of the demonstration had spread quickly through the town, and dozens of people carried posters with photos of missing children. Sandra quickly set up her live broadcasting equipment. "In 5 minutes, we'll be on the air for all of United States," she announced. It was then that they saw 3 black cars approaching the square. Clouser had arrived with reinforcements. "She came," murmured Iris, instinctively hiding behind Ted. "It's all right," he said, picking her up. "You're not alone anymore. You have a whole town protecting you now." Clouser got out of the car with 5 men, clearly trying to intimidate the crowd, but to her surprise, the people didn't disperse. On the contrary, more people kept arriving. "Mrs. Mercedes!" Clouser shouted across the square. "Stop this nonsense before someone gets hurt. The only nonsense here is you pretending to care about children," Mercedes replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd murmured approval. Clouser realized that she had lost control of the situation. "We're on the air in 10 seconds, announced Sandra. "Iris, are you ready?" The girl looked around, at the brave mothers, at the supportive crowd, at Ted, who was protecting her, at Sandra, who would give voice to her story. "I'm ready," she said, her small but firm voice echoing through the microphone. And then, before hundreds of people in the square and thousands watching over the internet, Iris Maria Santos, 6 years old, began to tell the truth that would change everything. "My name is Iris, and I want to tell you about the children who disappeared." Iris's voice echoed clear and firm through the microphone, reaching every person in the square and being transmitted live to all of United States. Sandra monitored the transmission numbers. There were already more than 50,000 people watching online, and the number grew every second. "My name is Iris Maria Santos. I'm 6 years old, and for 8 months I lived in a place they called a foster home. But it was actually where children were sold to bad people," she began, keeping her eyes fixed on the camera with a determination that impressed everyone. In the crowd, the silence was total. Even Clouser and her men had stopped moving, realizing that any attempt to interrupt now would be seen by thousands of people. "Aunt Clouser, who's standing right back there," Iris continued, pointing directly at the woman, "organized everything. She sold children to people from other states. I saw and heard many conversations about it." Clouser turned pale when she realized that dozens of cell phone cameras had turned to her. She tried to retreat, but the crowd had closed around the square. "I want to tell you about my friends who disappeared," Iris continued. "Pedro, who was 7 years old and liked to draw birds like me. He was sent to a coffee farm in another country to work. Camila, who had beautiful curly hair and sang softly when she was sad. She was sold to a family in Portugal for $100,000. Sandra watched the reactions of the crowd. The mothers wept openly, but there was also growing anger on the faces of the people. The indignation was turning into a powerful force. Julia, Mrs. Mercedes's daughter who gave me shelter today, was the kindest girl in the foster home. She always shared her food with me when I was hungry. She was taken 6 months ago by foreign men who said she was going to a special family. Mrs. Mercedes held the microphone that Sandra offered her. "It's true," she said, her voice choked, but firm. "My daughter Julia disappeared from the foster home 6 months ago. The police said she had run away, but I always knew that something was wrong. And I can prove it," said Iris, taking back the microphone, "because I remember everything I saw and heard, names, dates, values, conversations." Vanderlei, who had positioned himself strategically to protect the group, noticed that FBI cars were arriving at the square. His operation had finally received the necessary support from Washington, D.C. "Mrs. Dalva Mendez is who is in charge of everything," continued Iris. "She has a county clerk's office where they make fake documents for the children. And she knows judges and district attorneys who help hide everything." In the crowd, someone shouted, "Dalva Mendez, the owner of the Mendez County Clerk's office." "The same," confirmed Iris. "I heard her talking about how she had friends in the justice system who solved problems." The number of views of the transmission had passed 100,000. Sandra received messages from fellow journalists from all over the country saying that the story was being repeated on all news networks. "There's one more important thing that you need to know," said Iris, her voice growing more serious. "It's not just children from United States. There's an international network. People from other countries come here to look for American children, and Americans also send children abroad." Ted approached the microphone. "I'm Theodore Castanheira, and I can confirm everything Iris is saying. This brave child came to me when she was running away, and together we discovered a criminal network that has been operating for years in our area." "Why didn't anyone report it before?" shouted someone from the crowd. "Because they controlled part of the local police and the justice system," replied Vanderlei, identifying himself as a federal investigator. "I've been infiltrated in this operation for 2 years, and I can confirm that the corruption goes much further than we imagined." It was at that moment that Clusa completely lost her composure. "It's all a lie," she shouted, trying to approach the improvised stage. "This child is mentally ill. She makes up stories." But her attempt to discredit Iris had the opposite effect. The crowd reacted with hostility, preventing her approach. "If it's a lie," shouted Mrs. Fatima, "then explain where my son Pedro is." "And my Camila," added Mrs. Rosa. "And my little granddaughter Sophia," completed Mrs. Teresa. One by one, the mothers began to tell their stories to the microphone. Each testimony revealed the same pattern: children who disappeared from Clusa's foster home without adequate explanation, police investigations that led nowhere, families intimidated when they asked questions. Sandra monitored social networks in real time. The hashtag Justice for Iris is among the most commented subjects in the country, she announced. "We have more than 200,000 people watching now." At that moment, the FBI cars arrived. Federal agents got out of the vehicles and went directly to Clusa and her men. "Clusa Barreto," said the leading agent, showing an arrest warrant. "You're arrested for racketeering, human trafficking, forgery and corruption." The crowd exploded in applause and shouts of approval. Clusa tried to argue, but she was handcuffed and led to the federal vehicle. "And it's not over yet," said Iris to the microphone, watching Clusa being taken away. "There are many people involved. There's Dr. Fabio Mendez, who is a judge and helps them. There's Dr. Carla from the district attorney's office. There's Colonel Ribeiro from the state police. Each name that Iris mentioned caused commotion in the crowd. Sandra documented everything, knowing that she was witnessing a historical moment. "And there's one thing I haven't told you yet," said Iris, her voice growing more emotional. "About the children who tried to escape before me." The silence in the square intensified. There was a girl named Anna who was 8 years old. She tried to tell a neighbor about what was happening in the foster home. The next day she disappeared. And Clusa said she had been adopted, but I heard a conversation. They said she had been sent away as punishment. Ted hugged Iris tighter, feeling her tremble as she recalled those painful memories. And there was Gabriel, who tried to run away 3 times. The 3rd time, they said he was going to a special family that knew how to deal with troubled children. I never saw Gabriel again. Tears streamed down the faces of several people in the crowd. The dimension of the horror that these children had lived was becoming clear to everyone. "That's why I had to tell everything," concluded Iris. "Because if I didn't tell, who was going to speak for Pedro, for Camilla, for Julia, for Anna, for Gabriel, and for all the other children?" FBI agent Patricia Montero went up to the stage. "Iris, on behalf of the FBI, I want to thank you for your courage. Thanks to your statement, we obtained arrest warrants for 23 people involved in this criminal network." 23? asked Sandra, surprised. "The operation is happening simultaneously in 5 states. County clerks' offices, clinics, fake, foster homes, corrupt authorities. This demonstration was the trigger for the biggest operation against child trafficking in the history of the country." Iris looked at the crowd, then at the cameras, and finally at Ted. "I want to thank Ted, who saved me when I needed it most. He taught me that there are good people in the world." Ted knelt beside her. "You're the one who saved me, Iris. You gave me a purpose, a family, a reason to fight for something bigger than myself. And I want to thank all the mothers who lost their children and still had the courage to fight for justice," continued Iris. "You're the bravest people I've ever known." Mrs. Mercedes approached the microphone. "Iris, you gave voice to our children. Now they're not alone in the silence anymore." As the transmission continued, news of arrests arrived in real time. Dalva Mendes had been arrested at her county clerk's office. Judge Fabio Mendes was being removed from his functions. District Attorney Carla was being investigated. "One last thing," said Iris, her voice now stronger and more confident. "For all the children who are watching and who are going through bad things, tell someone. Don't be alone with the fear. There's always someone willing to help." The crowd in the square was now more than 1,000 people. The transmission had reached 500,000 views, and a 6-year-old girl had changed United States forever. "My name is Iris Maria Santos," she repeated to conclude, "and today I'm not afraid to tell the truth anymore." 6 months after the demonstration that changed United States, Iris was sitting in the backyard of the new house she shared with Ted, drawing in a new notebook. But this time, her drawings weren't just of birds flying free. They were of children playing, families reunited, and colorful houses full of love. The house was on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., far from the painful memories of Pleasantville, but close enough so that they could follow the trials that were still happening. It was a simple house, but it had something that Iris had never experienced before. It was truly a home. "How's the drawing?" asked Ted, approaching with 2 glasses of orange juice. "I'm drawing our family," replied Iris, showing the paper. "Look, here's me and you, here's Mrs. Mercedes visiting, and here's Sandra when she comes to do the interviews." Ted smiled, looking at the drawing. In recent months, he had formalized Iris's adoption through a clean legal process supervised directly by the FBI. He was now, legally and in his heart, father of the bravest girl in the country. "And who is this here?" he asked, pointing to a small figure in the corner of the paper. "It's Pedro," said Iris softly. "He was found." It was true. 3 weeks ago, the FBI had located Pedro working in slave conditions on a coffee farm in Colombia. Along with him, they found 12 other American children. All were being repatriated and would receive appropriate psychological support. Mrs. Fatima was very happy, commented Ted. She was, but she was also sad to see how thin and scared he was, like I was when I ran away from the foster home. But now he's safe, like you. Like me, agreed Iris, adding more colors to the drawing. The house's phone rang, interrupting the quiet moment. It was Sandra calling from New York City, where she now worked for a national television network. "Ted, I have news," she said excitedly. "They just convicted Dalva Mendez, 25 years in prison." "And the others?" "Clusa got 20 years. Judge Fabio was removed from his position and sentenced to 15 years. District Attorney Carla, 10 years. In total, we got convictions for 31 people from the network." Ted sat down heavily. 31 people, it was bigger than we imagined. Much bigger. But thanks to Iris, we managed to dismantle everything. And more, we managed to rescue 47 children who were in situations of trafficking. How are they? Most are recovering well. Some managed to return to their original families. Others are being cared for by adoptive families specializing in trauma. Iris, who had stopped drawing to listen to the conversation, approached the phone. "Aunt Sandra, can I talk to you?" Sandra had become a kind of honorary aunt to Iris, visiting regularly and keeping in constant contact. "Of course, my dear. How are you?" "I'm fine. I started studying at a regular school, and you know what else? I'm helping other children." "How so?" "Once a week, I go to a clinic where there are children who have gone through bad things like me. I talk to them, show them my drawings, tell them my story. Dr. Anna said that it helps them feel less alone." Ted smiled, listening to Iris speak. In recent months, he had followed the incredible transformation of the girl. From traumatized and scared child, she had become a little activist, using her experience to help other victims. "Iris, you're amazing," said Sandra, "and I have a surprise for you. Next week I'm going there to do a special story. 6 months later, how's the girl who changed United States?" "Cool. But I don't want to be famous. I just want people to remember that there are many children who still need help." After they hung up, Ted sat next to Iris in the backyard. "You know that I'm very proud of you, don't you?" "Why?" "Because you went through terrible things, but you chose to use that to help others. That's what special people do. You helped. Me too. If it weren't for you, I would still be scared and alone." "We helped each other," said Ted. "That's what families do." That afternoon, they received a special visit. Mrs. Mercedes arrived, accompanied by a 15-year-old girl, thin and with sad eyes, but alive. "Iris! Ted!" shouted Mercedes, radiant. "Look who I brought." It was Julia. She had been found in a house in Lisbon, where she lived as an unpaid domestic worker. She was traumatized and would take time to recover completely, but she was alive and back in United States. Iris ran to hug her friend. "Julia, I knew I was going to find you." "Iris, you've grown," said Julia shyly. "And you're braver than before." Mrs. Mercedes wept with joy, watching the two girls reunite. "Iris, if you hadn't told the truth that day, I would never have my daughter back." During the afternoon, while Julia and Iris talked and drew together, Ted and Mercedes spoke about the future. "How's her readjustment going?" Ted asked. "Difficult. She has nightmares. Sometimes she gets very quiet, but she's getting better little by little. And knowing that those criminals are locked up helps a lot." "And the other parents? How are they?" "Mrs. Fatima is radiant with Pedro back, even though he still needs a lot of care. Mrs. Rosa managed to locate Camilla. She's in a legal adoptive family in Portugal, and she's doing well. They decided to leave her there because she adapted and is happy. And the others? Mrs. Teresa is still looking for her granddaughter Sophia, but now she has hope. The international network is being investigated, and every day they find more children. In the late afternoon, when Mercedes and Julia left, Iris returned to her drawings. This time she did something different, a drawing of all the children who had been rescued, surrounded by their families, with colorful birds flying freely over them. "This is the most beautiful drawing you've ever done," said Ted. "It's because—" "Now I know that happy endings really exist," replied Iris. "It's not like in fairy tales, where everything becomes perfect from one hour to the next. It's a happy ending that we build a little bit every day." "How so?" "Every day that I wake up safe, that you make me breakfast, that we talk in the backyard, that I help other children. Each of those days is a piece of my happy ending." Ted hugged Iris, feeling immense gratitude for everything they had lived together. "You know you've completely changed my life, don't you?" "How?" "Before you, I was lost. I thought I wasn't good for anything, that I had no purpose. You taught me that I can be useful, that I can make a difference in someone's life. And you taught me that there are good adults in the world, that not everyone lies, that some people really care." That night, after Iris fell asleep, Ted sat on the porch looking at the stars. He thought about the incredible journey they had traveled together, from the night he first heard her trembling voice through the intercom to this moment of peace and security. His life had changed radically. The company he had lost years ago didn't matter anymore. The money he had invested badly made no difference anymore. He had found something much more valuable, a real family and a real purpose. In the room next door, Iris slept peacefully, surrounded by her colorful drawings and her stuffed animals. She no longer had nightmares every night. She no longer woke up screaming in fear. She had found, finally, what every child deserves: a home where she is loved unconditionally. And the next morning, like every morning for the last 6 months, they would wake up together, have breakfast together, and continue building one day at a time, the most unlikely and most special family that either of them could have imagined. Because sometimes the happiest endings are not those that come ready-made. They are those that we build with courage, love, and the determination to never give up on each other. On Iris's bedside table next to her teddy bear was a special drawing that she had made on the day the adoption was finalized. It was a small house with 2 figures in the door, a tall man and a small girl, and above them, written in her still childish handwriting, "My forever family." And that's exactly what they were, a forever family, born not of blood, but of the choice to care for each other through life's most difficult storms.